In old age, one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is peace through solitude. Many people fear being alone, thinking it means being forgotten or unwanted. But solitude, when embraced with wisdom, becomes the most powerful space for reflection, healing, and self-discovery. It's a season of life where you finally have the time to sit quietly with your own soul, not to feel lonely, but to feel whole. When you are young, your world revolves around others, family, work, responsibilities, friends, and social obligations. You give so much of yourself that often you lose touch with who you truly are. But as you grow older, life starts to whisper a new message. It's time to return home to yourself. This is not selfishness, it's self-realization. It's about learning that you no longer need to chase validation, prove your worth, or explain your silence. You have earned the right to simply be. Silence in old age is not a sign of weakness or isolation. It's a mark of wisdom. You begin to understand that not every thought needs to be spoken, not every argument needs to be won, and not every opinion deserves your reaction. You realize that peace of mind is far more valuable than being right. You become selective with your energy, choosing quiet walks over noisy conversations, and reflection over confrontation. You begin to find beauty in the sound of your own breathing, the rhythm of nature, and the stillness of mornings that once felt empty but now feel sacred. Solitude teaches you the art of detachment, not in the sense of rejecting people, but in freeing yourself from emotional dependency. You start to see that everyone is walking their own path, carrying their own burdens, and that your peace cannot depend on how others behave. You learn to stop expecting people to understand your silence or appreciate your calm. You simply stay centered, observing the flow of life without losing your inner balance. This stage of life becomes a kind of spiritual retreat. You start to reflect on what truly matters: health, gratitude, forgiveness, and contentment. You might look back at old conflicts and realize how meaningless they were. You forgive not because others always deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You accept that not everyone will walk with you till the end. Some will leave, some will forget, and some will misunderstand. But you don't chase anyone anymore. You honor your own company. To focus on yourself in old age means listening to your body, nurturing your mind, and guarding your emotions. It means slowing down and allowing silence to heal the noise that once filled your life. The world becomes quieter, and in that quietness, you finally hear what your heart has been trying to say all along. Solitude is not loneliness. It's the sanctuary of a soul that has lived, loved, and learned, and now seeks nothing more than peace. As you grow older, one of the most powerful lessons life teaches you is that peace is priceless. In your younger years, you may have spent energy trying to please others, fix broken relationships, or prove yourself to people who never truly saw your worth. But as time passes, you begin to realize that not everyone deserves access to your heart, your time, or your energy. Protecting your peace becomes an act of self-respect, not selfishness. When you reach old age, your energy becomes sacred. You no longer have the physical or emotional strength to waste on meaningless conflicts, gossip, or negativity. You understand that peace doesn't come from a perfect life. It comes from a calm mind. This is the stage where you begin to filter your environment carefully. You choose who can come into your space and who cannot. You stop entertaining drama, arguments, or anything that disturbs your mental balance. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. The world is full of noise, opinions, expectations, judgments, but you learn to stay grounded in your own truth. You no longer react to every situation. Instead, you respond with silence. You realize that silence has more power than words because it shows emotional maturity. You don't need to prove your point or justify your choices. You've already lived through enough to understand that people only see from their level of awareness. So you stop seeking validation from anyone. You simply protect your inner calm. Protecting your peace also means knowing when to walk away. There will always be people who drain your energy, those who constantly complain, criticize, or bring negativity into your life. You might have tolerated them once, but now you quietly distance yourself. You don't fight, you don't argue, you just withdraw. You understand that you can love people from afar without allowing them to disturb your mental well-being. You focus on peace over approval, serenity over connection, and calmness over chaos. This stage of life teaches you emotional discipline. You realize that every reaction costs energy, and not every situation deserves that cost. You learn to let go, not with anger, but with acceptance. You stop expecting life to be fair or people to be kind. Instead, you focus on what you can control, your thoughts, your emotions, and your boundaries. You create an invisible shield around your heart that protects your peace from being stolen by others' behavior. Protecting your energy also means saying no without guilt. You understand that your time is precious, and not every invitation or favor deserves your effort. You choose rest over rush, reflection over reaction, and solitude over superficial company. You start valuing quiet mornings, peaceful evenings, and conversations that uplift your spirit. You no longer chase excitement. You crave peace. You stop measuring happiness by what you own or who you're with. Instead, you measure it by how calm your heart feels at the end of the day. You finally understand that your peace is your true wealth, and protecting it is the greatest act of wisdom you can practice in your later years. In old age, one of the most liberating lessons is learning to let go of control of people, situations, and outcomes. For much of your life, you might have tried to guide, advise, or even fix others. You wanted the best for them, your children, your friends, your family. But often, this desire came with frustration when they didn't listen or act the way you hoped. Eventually, you realize that everyone must walk their own path, learn their own lessons, and face their own storms. You can love deeply, but you cannot live someone else's life for them. This realization brings a deep sense of peace. You start to understand that controlling others or trying to shape their choices only drains your spirit. You can offer wisdom, but not enforcement. You can give love, but not direction. You can pray for them, but you cannot protect them from every pain. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop suffering over what you cannot change. It is the acceptance that life unfolds in its own timing and that each soul has its own destiny. In your younger days, you might have believed that your way was the right way. You wanted to make sure your family, your children, or your loved ones didn't make the mistakes you made. But age teaches you that wisdom can only be shared. It cannot be imposed. Sometimes, people need to fall to learn to grow on their own. You begin to understand that control is rooted in fear, while detachment is rooted in faith. You trust that life will teach each person what they need to know at the right time. Letting go of control also brings freedom to your heart. You no longer stress over who visits, who calls, or who remembers you. You stop measuring love by how often people show up. You realize that peace doesn't come from others doing what you want. It comes from releasing expectations altogether. When you detach from the need to control, you open space for acceptance, patience, and spiritual calm. You also learn that control often leads to unnecessary conflict. When you try to make others live according to your expectations, it breeds tension and misunderstanding. But when you allow them the freedom to be who they are, you preserve your peace and your relationship. Detachment teaches you that silence can often say more than advice, and patience can heal more than correction. You start to see beauty in letting things flow naturally without forcing outcomes. This mindset doesn't just apply to people, it applies to life itself. You stop fighting the changes that come with age, the loss of youth, or the shifts in relationships. You understand that everything is temporary joy, pain, success, and failure. You start living in the flow, not the resistance. You trust that whatever is meant for you will remain, and whatever leaves your life was never yours to hold. Detaching from control is not indifference. It's emotional maturity. It's choosing inner peace over external influence. It's understanding that you cannot control the waves, but you can learn to stay calm within them. And in that calm, you find a quiet power that no amount of control could ever give. As you grow older, one of the most profound lessons life teaches you is that silence holds more power than words ever could. In your youth, you might have felt the need to speak up, to defend yourself, to explain your every action, or to prove your worth to others. But with age and experience, you begin to realize that not every truth needs to be spoken, not every insult deserves a response, and not every misunderstanding requires your correction. Silence becomes your wisdom, your protection, and your greatest strength. There comes a point in life where you recognize the futility of unnecessary arguments. You understand that people will hear only what they want to hear, see only what they wish to see, and believe only what suits them. You stop wasting energy trying to convince others of your intentions. You understand that silence doesn't mean weakness. It means self-control. It's the maturity of knowing when to walk away, when to hold your peace, and when to let life speak for itself. In your later years, silence becomes a shield. You learn to guard your emotions and your inner world. You realize that peace of mind is more valuable than proving a point. When someone tries to provoke you, you no longer react impulsively. You observe quietly, knowing that your silence will say more than anger ever could. You begin to notice that quiet people are not empty. They are full of depth, wisdom, and awareness. Their silence comes from understanding, not ignorance. Silence gives you clarity. When you stop talking excessively and start listening to yourself, to nature, and to life, you begin to see things differently. You hear the subtle lessons in your own experiences. You understand people without them having to explain much. You learn that silence is the foundation of emotional intelligence. It allows you to think before you speak, to feel before you act, and to detach before you react. This kind of silence is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of self-awareness. As you age, you realize that silence also protects your dignity. There's a certain grace in remaining calm when others expect you to react. You understand that not every battle is worth fighting. You no longer rush to correct lies or defend your reputation. You trust that time has its own way of revealing truth. You know that people's opinions are fleeting and your peace is eternal. You let your actions, not your arguments, define you. That's the silent strength that grows with wisdom. In silence, you also find healing. The quiet moments allow your heart to rest from years of giving, worrying, and striving. You stop filling every second with noise, chatter, or distraction. You sit in stillness and listen to your breath, your thoughts, and your memories. You begin to reconnect with your soul. You reflect on what you've been through, what you've learned, and what truly matters. You realize that silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. The more silent you become, the more you begin to understand that peace is an inner experience, not something that others can give you. You stop seeking comfort from outside voices and start finding it within. You begin to enjoy your own company. You appreciate quiet mornings, peaceful evenings, and moments of stillness that once felt lonely but now feel sacred. You no longer need to fill every silence with conversation or every pause with entertainment. You are content in your own presence. Silence also gives you spiritual depth. It connects you to something higher than the noise of the world. In silence, you feel the presence of the divine, the beauty of gratitude, and the serenity of acceptance. You begin to realize that the more you silence your outer world, the louder your inner wisdom speaks. You gain insight that words could never express. You find truth not in what is said, but in what is felt in the quiet of your heart. In old age, silence becomes your best friend. It keeps you grounded, peaceful, and wise. It helps you rise above pettiness, gossip, and drama. It allows you to observe without judgment and respond without anger. It transforms you from being reactive to being reflective. It gives you mastery over yourself, a calmness that cannot be shaken by the noise of the world. Because at this stage of life, you finally understand true strength doesn't shout, it stays silent, steady, and unbothered. In old age, one of the most beautiful realizations is that life has given you the opportunity to turn inward, to shift your focus from the outer world to your inner being. For decades, you might have lived for others, your children, your career, your family, or society's expectations. You carried responsibilities, faced struggles, and often put your own dreams on hold. But this chapter of life is different. It's not about chasing, proving, or competing anymore. It's about understanding yourself, nurturing your soul, and finding meaning in your own existence. When you start focusing inward, you realize that real happiness was never outside of you. It was always within. The world teaches you to seek joy through possessions, relationships, and achievements. But with age, you see through the illusion. You understand that external success fades, people change, and circumstances evolve. What remains constant is your inner world, your thoughts, your peace, your values, your relationship with yourself and with God. This is the time to invest in that inner landscape, to plant seeds of calmness, gratitude, and acceptance. Self-reflection becomes your teacher. You begin to look back on your journey, not with regret, but with understanding. You see how every pain shaped you, how every loss deepened your wisdom, and how every failure guided you towards self-awareness. You no longer view hardships as punishments. You see them as part of the divine design that molded your strength. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What did this teach me?" That shift in thinking transforms your entire outlook on life. When you spend time in self-reflection, you also start cleansing emotionally. You forgive yourself for your past mistakes. You realize you were doing the best you could with the knowledge you had at that time. You stop carrying guilt and shame that serve no purpose. You free your heart from old grudges, anger, and bitterness. You begin to understand that peace cannot live in a heart full of resentment. So you release the past, not to forget, but to find freedom. Forgiveness becomes a form of healing, not for others, but for yourself. Inner growth also means reconnecting with your spiritual side. In youth, the noise of life often distracts you from spirituality. But now, silence gives you the chance to listen to that still, sacred voice inside. Whether you pray, meditate, read scriptures, or simply sit in nature, you start to feel a deeper connection with the Creator. You begin to understand that you are not just a body that ages. You are a soul that evolves. This spiritual awareness brings a serenity that no worldly pleasure can match. You stop fearing death and start appreciating life as a temporary journey. You find comfort in knowing that everything has its divine timing. When you focus on your inner world, you also develop emotional resilience. You no longer react impulsively to problems. You respond calmly. You stop letting small issues disturb your peace. You begin to understand that you cannot control life, but you can control your attitude toward it. You practice patience, mindfulness, and gratitude. Each morning becomes a gift, each moment becomes a lesson. You learn to live with intention rather than habit. You stop existing automatically and start experiencing consciously. Investing time in self-growth also involves simplifying life. You begin to declutter, not just your surroundings, but your mind and emotions. You stop holding onto unnecessary things and unnecessary people. You value quality over quantity, depth over appearance, and meaning over material. You understand that a peaceful home, a healthy body, and a quiet mind are greater blessings than luxury or fame. You no longer seek excitement, you seek contentment. You learn to enjoy the beauty of simple things: a cup of tea, a quiet walk, a sincere smile, a peaceful nap. At this stage, you also learn the power of gratitude. You stop focusing on what you've lost and start appreciating what you still have. You give thanks for every breath, every sunrise, every memory. Gratitude turns ordinary days into blessings and ordinary moments into miracles. It keeps your heart young even as your body ages. It shifts your focus from what's missing to what's meaningful. Ultimately, focusing on inner growth in old age transforms you. You stop being afraid of solitude because you realize solitude is where your soul blooms. You stop chasing noise because silence becomes your comfort. You stop running after people because peace becomes your priority. You realize that your greatest wealth is not money or possessions. It's inner harmony. This is the time to return to yourself, to nurture your spirit, and to live with quiet dignity. When you focus on your inner world, you don't just age, you evolve. You move from doing to being, from noise to stillness, from seeking to knowing. And in that transformation, you find the purest form of freedom, a life lived peacefully within, no matter what happens outside. In the end, old age is not a decline, it's a return to peace. It's the time when you stop chasing and start cherishing, when silence becomes golden and solitude becomes sacred. You no longer measure your life by what you have, but by how deeply you've understood yourself. Focusing on your inner world, protecting your peace, and embracing quiet strength becomes your ultimate freedom. You realize that true happiness was never about others. It was about finally being at peace with yourself, living gently, and letting your soul rest in the calm wisdom of life's final season.